Welcome back to Morning Live, and right now you want to talk about our environment, the pollution issues, and of course the United Environmental that is Assembly, United Nations Assembly is going on right now with the 193 member states already in the country, and it's ending on Friday. With me in studio, as I mentioned earlier before we took a break, is Mr. Luther Ankud, the regional director of IUCN, and he'll be taking us through the issue of plastics and specifically the pollution of the marine. Now, karibu sana, Wana Luther.
Thank you very much.
All right. Now, when we focus so much on pollution, there's so much happening in the globe, and pollution is something that has been fought left, right, center. The UN, of course, being one of the most vocal kind of side of just trying to condemn how people are messing up the environment. But we've seen so much change, and right now the focus is also on the marine situation. How is it so far for you guys?
Yeah, thank you so much for, first of all, the invitation to come to this talk and for this morning show. You're right, the issue of marine plastics is a big issue. It's a global crisis, actually. As you're aware, billions of people depend on the oceans for their livelihoods.
Sure.
And all of this is being threatened by marine pollution. Just to understand the context of the problem, you will find that about one truck full of marine plastics, go into the marine, go into the waters, into the oceans every minute. And if this goes unchecked, it will reach to 4 trucks per minute by 2030. And of course, that has got huge, huge implications. But apart from just talking about the effects of plastics on marine, it also has a huge effect on the people who are not necessarily living in the oceans or don't depend on the oceans, because it has a huge implication on, it does affect, it gets into our food and our water, and does affect our health and our general well-being.
Okay. When you talk about plastics,
yes.
Yeah, maybe you can, it's actually an abbreviation, that is MAR plastics.
Yes.
And then there's a small S after the S, the big S now, plastics.
Yeah.
Maybe you can tell us now the initiative. There's also a sense of involving the coastal population. How is it now?
Yeah, so this is an initiative. The MAPlastics is a marine plastics, basically. It's an initiative by IUCN to address this issue. First and foremost, maybe I just say a little bit about what IUCN is and how it connects with this particular project.
Yeah,
So IUCN is the International Union for Conservation of Nature, and it's a unique organization, membership organization that has got both governments, civil society, and also individual scientists and experts such as environmental law and social policy experts as part of IUCN. So IUCN comes into this from basically a position of creating evidence for decision making. So MAPlastics is an initiative that is implemented in 5 countries, 4 of them in Africa. So in Kenya, in Mozambique, and in South Africa. And the whole idea is to engage with governments in establishing the level of the problem, first of all. So the big thing that's being done here is what we call the plastics, establishing the plastics footprint. This is understanding what the scale of the problem is and also its impact. And basically we're using a science-based approach to establish that scale of problem. And we are also using open science, meaning that we engage the public and engage citizens. So what's happening at the moment is this process is going on in these countries, and very soon we shall be having a report for Kenya, for example, which will establish clearly the scale of the problem and also the impact. That will certainly guide how decisions then will be made regarding legislation or regarding the type of changes that need to happen.
Okay, interesting. Well, when you talk about also involving people around, because they're a very integral part in just making sure there's some level of even efficiency in trying to fight all these situations like the plastic situation. Now, how do you involve the people on the ground, now the coastal residents on the ground? Yeah.
No, thanks. Actually, you're right. The issue which is existing in terms of plastics is that first and foremost, people do not actually know that this is a serious problem or they don't know the magnitude of the problem. The second thing is that we do have other issues that are related to this. First of all, there's inefficient waste management systems and processes. We also do have unsustainable behavior. We also do have sometimes lack of or unenforced legislation. So there are quite a number of areas that do touch how people should be engaged. And the most important one here is public awareness. So it is engaging the leaders and to engage communities on, first of all, understanding what exactly is this issue and how does it affect their own lives.
All right. Now, the team being involved in all this sensitization, and how are they actually empowered in terms of now the skills to train the people on the ground? Sometimes you've mentioned leaders, but I believe now going hands-on on the people who actually now do this to the marine life and also trying to maybe mess up the situation. Is it possible for a situation where you can go on the ground and just feel for yourself and talk to these guys, or you use leaders now to spread this information?
I must say that we are still in very advanced stages on this issue of handling marine plastics. If you compare a societal issue such as HIV/AIDS, for example, it really progressed to the level where, in terms of public health, a very, very big engagement of community. And so you'd have a lot of community educators doing that and being able to engage with people on a daily basis. At this stage, we are still at a point of very, very initial stages of creating awareness. So we're still using entry points such as leaders to bring them on board. And we haven't yet reached the level where actually it becomes a big societal movement. Nonetheless, having said that, there are initiatives, community-based organizations that do organize some campaigns, but they are still not at the scale where we can really address this problem effectively.
Interesting. Now, countries like Rwanda have been very, very vocal about plastics, about polyethylene papers and everything, just trying to eradicate this issue of pollution. Do you think it's also very important to involve governments here? Because I was talking about leaders now, to start from the top, whereby now the government, for example, Kenya, polyethylene papers actually were banned, and it's actually doing very well. No one is using it. No one actually is trying to make sure they're manufacturing the same. Now, is it proper for these nations to now get rid of plastic? Because now that's the bigger picture where now they go to the manufacturers to prevent all this. I know economic value has to touch on so many angles, but what do you think about that step?
So, well, this is a societal issue. It will require governments, it will require the private sector, it requires civil society organizations, it requires you and me to be part of the solution. But the examples you're quoting are certainly where government has taken a strong hand in terms of enforcement. Establishing legislation, but also enforcing it. Remember that a number of countries do have this legislation in place, or could be having this legislation in place, but enforcement would be a big challenge. So the example you're quoting of Rwanda is where enforcement has been effective.
Very successful.
And has been successful. But having said that, they also do have some other ride-ons. Remember that they do have a monthly National Cleaning Day, and so it's becoming a part of the lifestyle and a part of culture, which is very important. And so that also helps in terms of when you're introducing things to do with waste management. So the role of government is extremely, extremely important in terms of, first of all, creating the legislation, but also secondly in terms of enforcement. Having said that, I think the most important part is that society gets on board, that they do understand the cause effect. For example, if you do understand that eating with, what we do in public health, eating with dirty hands will give you some kind of infection. So you just avoid that. And we hope that we will reach those levels where people actually understand the cause and effect of using plastics. And that will be the most important one to use here.
Now, interesting statistics over here, and that it is estimated that at the current rate of production, a total of 34,000. This is actually a big number. 34 million tons of plastic will be produced by 2050. Already, it has been estimated, but I understand government needs to be involved here. The governments of the nations you pointed out. Now, when such a high number by 2050 will be produced, it means as an organization, there can be a way to now alert the government about this statistic, because now already our seas will be affected. Now, how will you be able to now use this statistic to make sure that indeed the government will do something?
The good thing is in these studies of two major initiatives we are involved in, this particular one of the plastics footprint, government is actually involved and it has to own that report. So we're just facilitating the process technically, but otherwise it becomes a Government of Kenya report, or it becomes a Government of Mozambique report. So
it's up to them to do something about it.
First of all, there's that level of ownership, so that's the beginning part. The second one is what we are going to do. IUCN is going to partner with UN Environment, UNEP, to do what we call a plastics leakage calculator, data calculator. That basically will show you the flow of plastics from production, consumption, and disposal, and how it gets into our waterways. So that would be quite interesting, because then people are going to see in Kenya what's the level of plastic, how does it actually affect us at different levels, and then we will be able to notice where is the problem exactly and what needs to be done. But back to your question on the magnitude of growth in terms of plastics, it is true, because as human beings, remember that plastics is a new thing. It's not been around for, all our ancestors didn't use plastic.
Absolutely.
So we created it and we got used to using it for different uses, and certainly it has got a lot of uses that we could apply it to. But at the same time, it has got these hazards that are related to it, and it's about creating that awareness, and it's about working with the private sector, because certainly they've used innovation to get into the plastics and to create a solution to a certain problem which was there. Probably, as you can see, probably they got into plastic carriers as a solution. But there are also many other solutions that can actually come up. So it's a question of engaging as well the private sector in coming up with solutions which are not necessarily plastics, but which address the issues which plastic used to address.
Okay. Now, is it the best thing to now push the governments to at least put an initiative of a recycling plant near such towns, because already the public knowledge is easy to maneuver through it. Now, recycling is a very, very important talk here. When you say about marine litter, that's something that we can't avoid it. But now, marine litter and the knowledge of recycling plants, the plastic recycling, yes.
Yeah, and interestingly, because of various innovations, this has become an area for creating jobs, has become an area of business.
Yeah, sure.
So people have innovated in such a way that there are a lot of initiatives now of recycling, and part of this is it's interesting. It's at a global level, but also within Kenya. If we're talking about Kenya itself, within Kenya, there are a lot of initiatives that have started. I can see a number of small businesses recycling plastics into making pipes and making building materials. This is already in process. So I think that there is a very big opportunity there in terms of how do we manage the waste which is already existing, even before we talk about the one which is coming. And what is needed here in terms of creating that environment is basically promoting those kind of businesses. So this is where we want to work and engage with the government, because such businesses could already be identified and given incentives so that they can actually continue to grow that piece of work. And it's also a big area for creating jobs. Today, globally, there are about 15 million people who are employed in the sector of just recycling and waste management.
Sure. Yeah. Interesting. Now, as I see you, and there's also the pressure, you know, as an organization, there's the pressure to be seen, at least you're doing something. And currently, with the UN also, you just mentioned you'll be partnering with them very soon. There'll be also that, like, all eyes on you, just making sure there's some sort of order in that sector. So maybe the pressure for you right now, what's the pressure right now? The urgent pressure for you right now?
Well, as you can imagine, I mean, this is a global crisis.
Yeah, sure.
So it's something that needs to be addressed quite urgently. But again, it takes a bit of time to bring all stakeholders together. But the momentum is building. And the nice thing about this is that we build coalitions. And a number of coalitions are now coming up. The level of awareness is increasing, and governments, the most important thing is also that governments are getting on board by the day. And I think that the issue of marine plastics, or generally plastics, has been greatly highlighted. If you look at the Blue Economic Conference that took place here in Kenya last year, it was one of the major highlights.
Yeah, sure,
and apart from that, there have been many more global events that have actually positioned this issue. So the pressure is there to get results out and get them out quickly. And I think we are working yet at a scale where we need to pick the right lessons and also be able to scale. And so that's going on quite well. I wouldn't be so optimistic about how you bring people on board because of the various stakeholders. But certainly the frame is being built around that.
Right. Interesting. Now, most polluted country, of course, we have India, we have that is Pakistan, and of course China is one of them. Now, these are the countries which are industrial countries, that means. And discharge of waste goes directly to the sea. As much as we're talking about plastics, these are people, you know, the focus in marine. Yes, plastics have to be involved, but plastics is actually a very integral part, and of course a big theme in this, but industrial discharge of even this, let me say, inorganic stuff, like just go to the sea. You know, these industries are very important, yes, in one way or another, but how are you planning to now kind of regularize them to stop this pollution? Because we've seen other countries whereby industries have been ordered to find other alternatives of actually discharging.
So there are a number of policy instruments that are promoted to do that, depending on what the country will choose. So I think the tension which is exactly going on at the moment is that, generally as the human race, we are all in this period of very high economic growth. And some choices have got to be made on how we do that. It is actually possible to grow economically, but using a sustainable manner, using a sustainable means to do that. And our argument is that if you don't take into consideration environmental considerations in terms of your economic growth, it will not be sustainable. Just the same way you're putting it, there's a lot of this waste that will go into the oceans, and after that you're killing marine life. And at the same time, your citizens are actually dependent on that. Because it's a big economy itself, the blue economy or the marine economy is big itself. So you're actually destroying that, apart from other effects of climate change and the rest. So what's happening is that, first of all, creating that level of awareness about the disasters or the hazards that this create. But secondly, creating a legislative regime that helps address that. In some of the countries, they have decided to ensure that there is third-party liability around this type of thing, so that if you are the polluter, you're responsible up to the end on that particular kind of product or that kind of... an example could be if you make a bottle, a plastic bottle, for example, and you sell your product in it, you'd be responsible even up to the point of the disposal of that particular product. So these type of things make people a bit more responsible, because at this point, unless there's legislation that makes people responsible, that kind of behavior may not necessarily stop.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Luther Nukur, for coming to studio today to shed more light about the marine litter and plastics, and good job you're doing, and continue putting pressure, because I believe we're very soon be having a clean marine life. And of course, fish, very important. That's the most affected in the seas. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much, Tim.
We're now taking a short break now. When you come back, you want to focus on other issues around the country and, of course, East Africa. So keep it Switch TV.